out and that we are going to be able to talk about something that is really, I believe, something that can really be changed if we start doing some things right when people are in their 30s, 40s, and 50s, and even we can reverse a lot of things when people are in their 70s and 80s and their 90s. So we're going to talk about that a lot tonight, about just really what's possible. We're going to go through what I believe is quite possibly. There we go. Nice. All right. It's just going to be one of those nights. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Good. So just ignore me. So this, to me, is probably one of the best quotes that I've came across when it comes to establishing a strategy for any health issue. And so it's from General Dwight Eisenhower. In preparing for battle, I have always found plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. And so what I want to get out of that quote, I believe that the essence of that quote is you absolutely have to have a plan. But if I was going by plans that I developed for myself 20 years ago, or even some of the nutritional teaching that I talked about 20 years ago, or the fitness strategies, or the way that I was working at it 20 years ago, if I was still doing that today, it would not be serving me at all. And what I find is the biggest mental block to a lot of people when it comes to health and health solutions is they feel they have to have it absolutely right before they take action. Have you ever been there? We just got to get the paralysis of analysis, right? And the challenge is there's so much more available research, and I'm going to encourage you a lot tonight to do your own homework. One of the points that we're going to be talking about is taking personal ownership of this thing called brain health that eventually will either avoid Alzheimer's disease or walk you smack dab into it. So I'm not about don't investigate. You absolutely have to be your own advocate on this stuff, and you'll learn that tonight. But what you cannot do is wait until you've got the perfect plan. Because the perfect plan does not exist. You have to have a plan, and that's why you're here tonight, is to begin, and that's the key phrase for tonight. We're beginning a plan to avoid what I believe is probably one of the biggest healthcare disasters that we're about to see in Canada if things don't change. And that's just not my opinion. Health Canada, I don't know if you read on the poster, but by 2038, it's estimated that there's going to be a new diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease, one person every 2 minutes in Canada by 2038, if preventative steps aren't taken. So if we keep on doing things the way that it's been done in the last decade, then one every 2 minutes is going to be a new diagnosis of Alzheimer's disease. Now, can we keep up with that? Like, do we have enough hospitals? Do we have enough care facilities? Do we have enough, daughter-in-laws, right, to look after that amount of disability? So, can we handle that? No. Thank you guys. Yeah. We've got a whole table of nursing students here. They're saying, no, we cannot. You can't handle that, right? And so we do have to start developing some plans. Don't wait until it's perfect. Take action. I want you to do some of the things that we talked about tonight, whether you've got it completely figured out or not. I want you to start tomorrow. That's what I want you to do, right? That's how I know we've inspired some positive planning here. Okay, that's Dwight Eisenhower. So tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to go through 3 points, and basically these 3 points are observations that I've gathered over the last 20 years that will keep you fixed in where you're at right now. And I'm going to assume that doing things mostly the way that the average Canadian is doing. Obviously, you're here in this room, so you are different. You're looking for different strategies. Okay, so I'm assuming a lot when I say that statement. But the observations are, we're going to cover that in the 3 points. And we need to break some old beliefs in order for you to move on to accept what I think is a lot more appropriate understanding of how the brain works and how you can keep it healthy. Then we're going to get into 3 strategies, and this is where all you note-taking folks are going to have a Hornet pen. So the 3 strategies are going to be rapid fire. We also will have this video up on our YouTube channel, so if you're missing a lot of it or need values and that kind of stuff, you can go to our YouTube channel and you can watch this whole droning Dr. J again, just because it's so exciting, you know. But no, you can get all the details there, so you can stress. You don't have to stress so much, other than you'll have to go to another class tomorrow to take notes there. So you kind of might as well be here when you're here, right? Yeah. Okay. So that's those are our 3 strategies, and then in my opinion, what are the 3 best action steps? So biggest bang for your buck. So if you're going to invest time and energy, and in some cases money, where are you going to get the best strategy for your effort, your resources, in order to beat any type of brain disorder? Because that is the thing that I realized when I started researching specifically for Alzheimer's disease. If we could really just get people doing this, what we're going to talk about tonight, then we would see a radical change in every brain disease that I know of. Now, I'm not an expert in kind of brain biochemistry and all that kind of stuff, but I am a neurological-based chiropractor, so I'm a very functional, focused neurological expert. So that's where my passion comes in, and you're going to hear a lot of that tonight. So if at any time you're thinking that this is sounding like a chiropractic sales pitch, yeah, it is, but it isn't, because it just works, what we're going to be talking about. And I'm going to share the science so you understand that, so you know why one of the greatest tools to stimulate your brain is not what you think. Dun, dun, dun. We'll get there. Okay. So
making sure you don't meet really.
Yeah, that was good. I said everybody up really did that. Okay, so let's get into what's that? Yeah. Oh, woke up again. Okay. All right. Let's get into these 3 observations, or these 3 points that I have seen over the last 20 years. Okay. So, where do we get kind of our lifestyle habits from? Yeah, most likely. You know, like when you choose, like if you're stressed out and you reach for comfort food, guess what? Likely that food was comfort food in your home when you were growing up. Maybe, maybe not, right? You know, if you're stressed out, like for me it's a bag of chips, for my wife it's cookies. And her mom is like this gigantic baking like Christmas. I'm like, man, I'm in a glucose coma when I go visit my in-laws at Christmas, because the baking is just crazy, you know, just crazy, you know. So that whole sweet tooth thing, but that's a major comfort strategy for her family. That's a lifestyle thing. For us, it was more the salt and whatever, the salts and fats. That was kind of the thing for us. But anyway, so yeah, so your lifestyle is absolutely, or not absolutely, but most of your lifestyle habits, especially when you're stressed, come out of what you saw when you grew up. You know, how often you exercise. You know, if that wasn't modeled in the home, that's really hard to change that. How many people are trying to exercise more than the home they grew up in? Because they, yeah, well, yeah, even me, right? Yeah, it's just like, oh man, I just wish my parents had been like Olympians. That really would have solved a lot of my problems, right? Because it's all their faults, right? But anyway, yeah, it's so much easier to blame my parents, you know. And so those lifestyle patterns. The other things that I see with people too is just, you know, how often or how quickly do you reach for that bottle of Tylenol? You know, so whatever was modeled in your home is probably going to be modeled by you. I'm talking about times of crisis, times of stress. I mean, that's when we see the real you, when you're stressed out. And anybody have a friend who's like really nice, as long as they're not stressed out? They become like Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde when they're stressed out. Yeah. The real you, please show up. That's when people are stressed. That's, as doctors, that's when we really see, okay, where's the rubber hits the road? You know, where is this? When people are stressed, that's when we see the lifestyle patterns show up. The destructive patterns show up. And how about that food that you just cannot stand eating that you know is really super healthy for you? Where did you get that from? Yeah, probably your home, right? For me, it's Brussels sprouts, right? I'm trying to not put that on my kids. I got a daughter that loves Brussels sprouts, so I just sit there, you know, I don't know what those mini cabbages are, but, you know, anyway. But everybody's got sort of that one area that they got to work on, and that's lifestyle. Now, the reason I start with lifestyle is because so much of the brain disorders, especially Alzheimer's disease, what do we assume? There's a strong, what's the word I'm looking for, nursing students? Starts with G. strong genetic component, right? Yeah. And see, my undergrad degree, sorry if this is an old story for you guys, but my undergrad degree was in something called advanced cellular biology, which was really weird. I actually didn't know I was getting into that, right? And most people are like, what did you go to chiropractic school for? You wouldn't have had to gone through all that. So anyway, I didn't realize that, but it sounded interesting at the time. But I'm so glad that I put up with that kind of education, because now I've got a really good understanding of genetics. And with this last decade of understanding epigenetics, have you guys heard of epigenetics now? This is really cool, because epigenetics is actually a lot more accurate understanding of how genetics play in or can get taken out of the equation. So this is really cool, especially when we're talking about things that, you know, the cancers and the heart disease and the genetic markers. You know, there's a genetic marker for Crohn's disease, breast cancer. You just go through it, right? There's 2,100 different genes that we know of now, right? Yeah, it's a lot, you know. But the reality is, we all have some pretty nasty genetic predispositions if they're allowed to be activated. This is what epigenetics is. Epigenetics is, and depending on the researcher, you are going to find them, quote, between 70 upwards of 90, so I like to average it out at about 80%, but 80% of the genetic disorders are activated by lifestyle. Not well? So, as much as we would love to blame our parents for everything that goes wrong in our life, the reality is genes contribute, they can set you up, but lifestyle activates. So if you have a family line of cancer, heart disease, Crohn's disease, Alzheimer's disease, take hope. You are ridiculously in charge of how your life plays out. I get excited about that, okay? Because I lost a grandfather at like late 50s to a massive cardiac event. You know, it was brutal, just no life. He had his first heart attack 13 years before that. So he didn't even have any quality of life the last decade of his life, and he still died way, way too early. And, you know, 20 years ago, you know, guess what? What do I automatically assume? There's nothing I could possibly do to prevent that because it was all about genetics. Well, we find, and I see this through observation, that diseases also run in people who do similar and like activities. So that means they have the same lifestyle. So a similar lifestyle can actually get you to a very nasty place or a very positive place if it's, you know, we're going to talk about the positive side of this, but I want you to understand and start changing that belief that, you know, Alzheimer's is genetic. Yes, it is. Alzheimer's is lifestyle. Yes, it is. See how this can get confusing? Yeah. Yeah. So that's why I want to give you some hope that, you know, you do the things that we're talking about tonight, and you do not have to be a slave to genetics. Okay? That's it. Okay. So, all right. Okay. Yeah, that's not something you guys probably hear a lot about, right? Preventing this kind of stuff. Yeah. Well, that's why I ordered this kind of what I thought was going to be a really wacky book. It's called Awakening from Alzheimer's: How 9 Maverick Doctors Are Reversing Alzheimer's, Dementia, and Memory Loss. And there's literally 150 pages of case after case after case of you know, a loving daughter figuring some things out and basically bringing back her dad or her father-in-law from the brink of, like, completely lost his mind. I mean, this guy was like a high-end accountant, just, you know, brilliant beyond belief, and the guy who was like wandering the streets didn't know who he was anymore. Like, just unbelievable how they backed up. And you know what? None of this stuff, like what we're going to talk about, I basically summarized this book for a lot of the nutritional stuff. It's just I mean, well, first of all, I got angry, right? So I'm like, this is crazy. Like, I had a grandma that passed away because of Alzheimer's. That was like, it was our first, in our family, it was the first grandparent to pass away. And it was just brutal. We didn't have a clue. That was 30 years ago. We didn't know what was going on. Grandma became this, like, I mean, completely off the wall, like aggressive. She was a sweet little lady. It was just nasty, just nasty. And if any of you have had grandparents or parents go down that road, you know it is just what. You know, and in the end, my mom just basically had my brother and I not go to the care facility because she's like, I don't want you remembering mom this way because she's not who she was, right? And we were young enough that that was kind of, you know, that mattered. I think it was a smart move by mom. I still kind of feel guilty about not being there as much as I should have, but I think I can blame my mom on that. There's freedom in blaming other people for our psychosis. Yeah. Okay. All right. All right. Okay. So, so again, I think I've talked kind of about this, and it's really, especially when we're talking about Alzheimer's disease, it's so hard to believe that it's preventable when it's happening so often, and there's so many families that are getting crushed by this. And for you guys who are kind of regular Lighthouses, you get this. I say this all the time. Just because something's common doesn't mean it's normal. There's a big difference between common and normal. Normal is living a long and healthy life, dying with your wits about you, remembering your grandkids and your great-grandkids' faces and names when you leave the planet. That is normal aging. Not dying of a massive cardiac arrest, not having cancer spread up all over our bodies. That normal for the human body is a state of incredible health. Are you different at 85 than you are at 25? What do you think, Jack? No, you don't have to be. Well, hopefully you're smart. I don't know. Have you guys been any good at this? Yeah. Okay. No, it's not? Okay. All right. I'm moving on. Yeah, I walked into that one. Yeah. But the reality is we have got this image of aging that is based on what we see, not based on what's actually possible. And I think that's one of the reasons I'm on the planet is just go, listen, this doesn't have to be, just because it's common doesn't mean that this is normal. Right? So that's a wrestle with that one. Right? Wrestle with that one, because I really, really believe that. So, and it's so confusing. Reading an article on, what was it, I better quote this right, New York Times. Now I know it's nothing to do with Journal of Medicine, but this New York Times is where it was in their health section, and it was actually talking about how basically fish oil is useless. So they said, the long-term studies. Let me read this. I got to read this to you because it's saying that there's very little benefit to fish oil supplementation, and the author was proposing that fish oil does not protect you from heart disease. The interesting thing I found when I was reading that is the article gave no amounts, not a single reference to the quality of the fish oil supplements. Is there a difference in quality of fish products? Oh my goodness, yeah. One level is toxic, kill you, Homer Simpson kind of stuff, right? And and the real stuff is actually beneficial, right? So there was no reference to any of that stuff, and didn't talk about whether it was capsule, liquid, didn't matter. And so interestingly enough though, in the actual body of the article, which was really starting to confuse me, there were two references that reported to say that there was an Italian study where people were taking 1,000 milligrams a day and reduced risk of cardiac death. The second spoke of Inuit, so our northern Canadians, First Nations northern Canadians, having a vastly lower risk of cardiac events. That's probably not new information to you, is it? No, it's been out there for 30 years. But see, this article is going to deceive a lot of people. And when I read this, I'm like, do people even have a clue how deficient we are in EHA and DHA? Do we have any clue? Right? No. And do we know that we're supposed to be taking 4 to 5 grams a day to make up for the deficiency, just to get back up to 0? Right? We need to be taking 4 times the amount that these Italians were taking. Isn't that crazy? That's 1 teaspoon a day of something like this. Okay? So the liquid Carlson's fish oil. 1 teaspoon a day. Okay? So something like this will last you about 2 months. Okay? So, but what did the lead researchers say? Well, they basically said that early fish studies took place in an era where cardiovascular disease was treated very differently than it is today. with far less use of statins, beta blockers, blood thinners, and other intensive therapies. So that's why they're saying fish oil is no good. To me, it's kind of like, well, it's not even related, but anyway. So anyway, the lead researchers said basically take your medications. But, and by the way, this is also what they said, the lead researchers, you should also keep eating lots of fatty fish. That's also what they said in their conclusion. Fish oil is inconsequential, but keep on eating lots of fatty fish with fish oil. So with research floating around like that, in a high visual New York Times health, like, the lead researchers are confused. So how is the average person reading this, they're going to be confused. So there's a ton of noise out there when it comes to health advice, and that's frustrating because, you know, I don't know why this stuff is out there. We've got 30 years of solid research on the benefit of EHA and DHA and fish oils, quality fish oils. Now, guys, it may sound like I'm going to beat up a little bit on the family physician. It's not my intention. Okay, no, we're not going negative, okay? And Ryan's been told to throw something at me if I go negative about it. Yeah, oh wow. Okay, all right, I'm going to stay very, very positive. Okay, all right. So I believe, at least the advice that I'm hearing through my patients from their physician, is that modern day doctors don't have a complete view of the human body. Okay? They may have one or two of the pieces, but they're locked in certain ways of thinking that inhibits them in thinking differently. Now, this is not everybody, but I've been doing this for 20 years, and I've had some wacky stuff that people tell me they've been told. Okay? And unfortunately, it's happened often enough that now I believe it. Okay? First few times I'm like, oh yeah, you just misunderstood that. No one would be that stupid. It just doesn't make any sense. It's not scientific, it's not logical. Okay, so please just, I know I'm a chiropractor and medical doctors and chiropractors are supposed to get along, but you know what? I get along great with really solid, passionate, intelligent medical doctors. I get along great with them. We have great discussions. I get great arguments out of one of my neighbors. Awesome. We don't hate each other. It's just that he actually believes in giving his kids drugs, and I don't do that for my kids, and so we get in fights. And we respect each other. Okay? That's different than being this way. Okay? Yeah, if you're looking for a world where everyone's got the same opinion, you're going to be alone. Okay, so when you're locked in thinking about the body, basically in rose-colored glasses that look at the body in a biochemical state, and that's where most of your tests and most of your strategies come from, out of a biochemical state, then it's really tough to not think about how we're going to fix this with a biochemical solution. It is the old adage that if everything, you know, if all you've got is a hammer, everything starts looking like a nail. Because your grandparents ever say that? And that's kind of that adage, right? And so blood tests, even genetic testings, offer very little way in understanding the body in a functional paradigm. So here is where we're really switching over to understanding your body in a functional paradigm rather than just a biochemical paradigm. Okay? So when we consider the brain as the ultimate muscle, I don't know if that's the next one or not, but we're just going to go for it. Yeah. When we consider the brain as the ultimate muscle, I believe that that's a lot more accurate. If we're going to talk about getting it stronger, getting it fitter, making it function better, then sticking with the supercomputer idea or you're just a kind of biochemical soup and a bunch of neurons firing and all that kind of stuff, that's true. But it doesn't do what it's... Okay, I'm going to go off on this big wild tangent now. So let's say you break your arm. Okay, so you break your arm, you're in a cast for how long? 6 to 8 weeks? Generally, it's a normal break. 6 to 8 weeks, right? Cast comes off, what's happened to the muscles? Totally atrophied. You look at one, you're like scrawny, well, you're actually probably looking more like my muscle, right? You look at the other one, and you look like Ryan, right? So big, bulky muscle, you know. But, so you know that taking fish oil and not exercising that atrophied muscle, we're going to talk about fish oil in a few minutes, is that going to build back that muscle? No. How about Tylenol? Steroids? Sure. Yeah. Well, if you don't work the muscle, right? Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Well, if I met Johnson, yeah, but no. So it's not, what do you need to do? You need to flex that muscle. And if you've got a good trainer, if you've got a good physio, if you've got good people around you, you can actually get that. I don't know how many times I've seen this. People come back, their weak side is now their strong side because they worked it and they worked it and they worked it and they worked it. Your brain is exactly the same way. If it's shrinking and atrophying and not being stimulated enough by the things we're going to talk about tonight, then throwing biochemical solutions at it is not going to make it stronger. Does that make sense? Is that a huge light bulb? Because for me, when I thought about it, I'm like, yeah, that's so how the brain performs and functions. Yes, the mental disorders and all that kind of stuff get affected by biochemicals, but is that getting there's a difference between balancing biochemistry and strengthening, like in Alzheimer's disease, a shrinking brain, an understimulated brain. And the vast majority of Canadians, for the vast majority of their life, have an understimulated brain. So functionally, it shrinks. Functionally, it breaks down. The nerves aren't as fine-tuned as they need to be. They just aren't. So understanding the brain in a functional paradigm is absolutely essential if we're going to beat Alzheimer's disease. Okay? So, biochemistry. So where do drugs fit in the picture, guys? So here I am kind of covering my behind here. Crisis and trauma. Crisis and trauma are where drugs and biochemistry fit perfectly. If I'm in a massive car accident, or I break my leg, or I'm speared myself and I'm bleeding from a lung, what do we need? We need our emergency system to go into full hyperdrive, right? Save my life, do whatever I need to do, patch me up, give me whatever painkillers you need to give me to stitch me up and save my life. But if we kept doing that, once I was lying in my hospital bed and I was all stabilized, thinking I did another surgery, maybe more and more medications, all that kind of stuff, it's kind of like calling the firemen when you have a fire in your house. They're hosing down your house with all this, axe down the door and all that kind of stuff, right? But then once the fire's out, once the crisis is over, you call them back the next day so they can douse your house again. We need to move beyond the biochemical and the radical surgical intervention that saves a life in a crisis or trauma, and move towards things that actually build health. Now that's a whole another thing, okay? But that's what I'm talking about, the right tool for the right job. And if we're talking about a shrinking brain, because that's the number one way, maybe I forgot to say this when we started, the number one way to know if you or one of your loved ones actually had Alzheimer's disease is on autopsy. And it's with a shrunk brain. The brain is actually shrunk. They measure the space between the brain and the skull, and if it's increased, you had Alzheimer's disease. That's the one diagnostic test. Unfortunately, it's a little late by now. Belief shift number one. Ooh, I almost swore. Okay. All right. So belief shift number one is that your body is a self-healing organism. Again, I've talked enough about this that I think we can kind of move on. But your body has got the ability to beat Alzheimer's disease. We need to change our paradigm, though, from biochemistry to functional in order to get results. That's what we're about. Okay. Next one. Okay. Belief shift number two. You have to become the most interested person in you. You are your own health advocate. To expect your family physician to do the research that's required to figure out your health disorders, that day is gone. I have people come into my office every single day that know more about their medical conditions than I do. And it's not because I'm an idiot. Okay? It's because I've got minutes with my people, and I try to pour into them as much as I can and get as much information as I can. They have hours to research this stuff. And yes, as much as the internet is a quagmire of disinformation, if you know how to search, if you know how to look, you can get more information than was ever available when I went through chiropractic school, when I did my undergraduate degree, It is just unbelievable, the volume of information and how specific you can get and the forums you can find of people suffering similar issues that have found solutions. It is incredible. And so I don't feel bad when a patient knows more about their condition than I do. I congratulate them. I encourage them. I'm a coach and a director. That's what I am. So if somebody comes in with an off-the-wall thing that they read from the internet, I say, okay, maybe consider this, this, and this. I get them pointed back in the right direction, and then I let them loose again. That's what I'm there for, to make sure they stay in reasonable guardrails so they don't get into that wacky stuff that's out there. So I'm more of a helper and a coach than I ever am an instructor. But the great thing is, when people are bringing you so many really great ideas, after 20 years or so, you get to be this really great instructor. Because they've literally taught me the things that work. You know, and then I look at that and I go, yeah, this is really solid. But it's not what anybody else is doing. But that's not the point. If we wanted the same results as everybody else, and wanted to be 1 in 2 in 2038 being diagnosed with Alzheimer's, we wouldn't be here today. Right? We just, oh yeah, whatever, I'm fine. Trust the experts. Well, the experts aren't doing so well in Canada right now. So, okay. So, and the next one. Okay. 6:55? Oh, goodness. Okay. Well, we're going to get really into it, and then the fun stuff's happening. Okay. Does anybody know what this is? That's a muskie. You know where it is?
Big fish.
I'm giving away a bottle of Carlson's
I don't know if it's
fish oil. If you ever had it. What's that? You're right. How did you know that?
I live there.
But you didn't know that was there. The biggest thing I saw traveling across. So anyway, it's got nothing to do about muskie.
Thank you.
Yeah, but it's got everything to do about being a salmon swimming upstream. You have to resist the urge to follow the lemmings in front of you. You cannot, like, the healthcare climate, there's so much pressure to conform, unfortunately. You know, so much pressure to conform. Fit in that 5 to 7 minutes. Don't rock the boat. Rock the boat. Your life depends on it. In fact, a lot of you people that you're in this room is because you've rocked the boat. You don't fit anymore. Right? You ever feel like that? You don't fit. You know? And so you need to go somewhere that's going to encourage you to continue not to fit. Because that's how you're going to have the longest, healthiest, safest, sanest life. Okay? So, alright, so that's belief shift number 3, strategy number 1. Okay, so I did say that we were going to actually get some points here. So rapid fire. Okay, so we need to decrease the inflammation that is causing brain damage. So how do we do that? We have got to kick the high carbs that are coming from grains. We've got to kick them to the curb. We've got to get some healthy fats in our body. We need to completely change the message of high carbs, low fat. That is like not okay for brain health at all. It's not good for other parts of your body as well, but especially brain health. Okay? So, Brain Brain is probably the most exhaustive text that I have read. In fact, unless you've got some major science behind you, it might not be a very fun read. There's some good stories in there, but I really recommend that anybody that is still struggling with the grain-based strategies that have been pushed at us for the last 20 years, you read that, you'll never go back. I'm not a big gluten-free guy. I'm not. Because if you avoid grains, you avoid gluten. Okay? So that's so essential to get the grains out of your body and start building up the good fats. Okay. All right. Oh, now I should have stayed on my notes, right? Okay. Now, Barry Sears. Has anybody read any of the Sears stuff? He's a big anti-inflammatory guy. Okay. He says that about 95% of the people he tests have got a significant degree of cellular inflammation. And that's basically because of the standard American or Canadian diet. Okay, so again, the grains, absolutely nasty. The acid addictions. So we talked about acid addictions with the cardiovascular disease talk. So those are the whites. So the white sugars, the white breads, the white vinegars, the white rice, anything white, that kind of stuff, right, has got to get out of the diet because it causes an acidic addiction. Again, this is all kind of that same family of, you know, if you want to read more about just real specific recommendations, the paleo world is really targeting that right now. Now, I'm not saying go completely paleo because I believe, yeah, no, you need to have carbs. You're getting your carbs, though, from vegetables and that type of thing, but moving away from the breads and the grains, that's really, really crucial, the pastas, those types of things. And again, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail on that because it's just, you can research that yourself. Just Mark's Daily Apple. That website, Mark's Daily Apple, he's got some great paleo writing, and he's not crazy paleo, he's just appropriate, scientific, and solid. That's a good resource. Second thing is stop the brain damaging effects of modern heart disease recommendations. Now this will freak you out. So go ahead, Lacey, and if we can get the next one going, and then probably just hit the space bar and see this. So listen to, is that going to come up? Okay, listen to this, because she is a biochemical.
And you've compiled some information about statin drugs. And I think you can, in public, sought and wrote papers, you know, obviously written series of papers, you know how to write a paper. So you submitted these to the potential scientific journals. And then some of the findings you found with statins, and wondering if you could share what your experience was when you submitted these papers.
Right, well, I wrote a paper on Alzheimer's. I was very interested in the connection between Alzheimer's and cholesterol, low cholesterol, actually possibly being a source of Alzheimer's, and statins in particular because they lower cholesterol and make that problem worse. And we wrote a paper that had a lot of interesting story about the effect of cholesterol in damaging the brain and reducing outcome. And that we made several references to statin drugs. And we submitted it to the journal and it came rejected. Part of the grounds of rejection had to do with the mention of statins. And so we put out all mentions of statins. We submitted a paper to a different journal, and the newspaper is in. You can read it in the European Journal of Medical Medicine. And I can tell you that in the 10 years since statins were first introduced in
So she goes on a lot more on that, but basically their study was showing that with the increased use of statins, increased rate of Alzheimer's disease, primarily because they were robbing the body of cholesterol. Again, really, it's so important to understand that cholesterol is not the enemy. I'm not going to get back into my whole cardiovascular talk because that's what that was all about. But cholesterol is not the right target. It's inflammation that's the target. It's got to be, if you're going to actually solve heart disease. That's where and then the challenge is, if you're on statins, you absolutely have to be taking a quality coenzyme Q10. So the quality coenzyme Q10, right, is the reduced form. So the alcohol form, which is the ubiquinol, rather than the ubiquinone. Okay, so rather than ONE, it ends with an OL. Okay? 4 times more bioavailability, a little more expensive, but it actually gets where it needs to go. But she goes on in that interview talking about how in the decade since, so that was done in 2000, so in the decade since they introduced statins, heart failure rates have basically outpaced cardiovascular events. So rather than clogging arteries, the heart's just failing. Well, that's basically because the statins block the validate process that creates coenzyme Q10. Coenzyme Q10 feeds your mitochondria. Mitochondria are essential for cardiovascular heart tissue health. And so within that coenzyme Q10, you are basically up the creek. Okay, so if you're on statins, you absolutely have to be supplementing with coenzyme Q10. In fact, the big joke, or it's not a joke, but it's real, is that one of the first versions of statins actually came bounded with coenzyme Q10 because the researchers knew that it was so critical to have the coenzyme Q10 in there, but it basically didn't hit the market because it was too expensive to produce, so they just pulled the coenzyme Q10 out of that and just put the statins. Is that wild? Anyway, yeah. So without getting into the whole conspiracy theory thing there, it's just, unfortunately, it's dollars and cents. You've got to have, if you are on statins and you're not willing to kind of take the necessary steps to get off them, then you got to be taking the coenzyme Q10. Okay. Okay, number C, overload in nutritional supplements that support great brain health. Okay, so a high quality fish oil, you've got to be consuming some kind of fish product every single day. So when we talked about it, yeah, I'm talking about 5 to 10 grams if you have a family history where you're actually concerned about memory issues or brain issues. So that's not 1 teaspoon, that's 2 teaspoons. That's overloaded. But just to get up to 0, you need to be between 4 to 5 grams. So healthy, young, adult male like myself, I take 4,600 units, which is 1 teaspoon of that every single day, just to keep me on 0. If I was concerned about actually a degrading brain, that's up to my wife to decide when that happens, I will actually have to double that. Okay? Vitamin D. Vitamin D3, this is probably one of the best vitamin D3s on the market. Okay? The reason is because pure encapsulations actually binds it with an alcohol so that D3 doesn't degrade.
So that's liquid.
This is liquid. The great thing is 1 drop is 1,000 international units. So in here is over 600 drops. So, but this is the part where you got to be careful. You just don't want to go all crazy with it, right? So you can actually take up to 10 drops a day and still be okay. We've had people who've taken up to 40 drops where they're fighting some really major kind of deep bronchitis because it's actually a hormone. Vitamin D3 is a hormone. We're looking at between 4 to 5 drops of that every single day. For somebody that has brain issues, 2 drops to 3 drops for someone who's just trying to maintain and just be healthy. Okay?
So you're talking 2,000 to 4,000.
International units a day, yeah. Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Strategy number 2. Okay. This is what is going to blow your mind. Exercise is actually more of a brain stimulant than nutrition. Exercise is more of a brain stimulant. When we're talking about firepower going up to your brain, it's body motion. So, you know how they say for seniors who are losing their mind, they should do crossword puzzles? They should learn a second language. They should pick up a musical instrument. 8 to 10% of brain stimulation from that. The rest is positive body signals. Okay, so this is where I'm going to go on my chiropractic rant for a couple minutes, and then we're going to back down and we're going to finish up. Okay? 90% of the body signals actually come from the pressure receptors, the joint receptors that are located along the spine. There are 70 plus joints in the human spine. 90% of the input to the hypothalamus is the part of the brain that is where we're seeing the plaquing and the tangles show up with people with Alzheimer's disease. So that's what? The vitamin D3, the fish oil. Oh, and I forgot to mention the coconut oil. The only saturated fat that's good for you, coconut oil. Well, it's not the only one, but the readily available, affordable one. Medium chain triglycerides, that's what we're talking about in coconut oil. So those are the things that melt the bundles and the plaquing that happen in the hypothalamus. So the hypothalamus is the memory center, more or less, for the human brain. So remember we're talking about function of the human brain. So those are the cells that get lost the first when people who lose their minds. So let's go back to the math. So 8 to 10% of the signals feeding into the hypothalamus and memory come from you doing crossword puzzles, you learning a second language, you picking up a musical instrument. So it does have value, I'm not saying, but if that's all our seniors do, are they ever going to beat Alzheimer's disease? Are they ever going to beat dementia? No, their biggest bang for their buck is getting off their behind and going for a walk. But unfortunately, most of them are so beat up and decrepit because of bad lifestyle, right? You know, that they're in a wheelchair, right? So I'm not talking about them, I'm talking about you guys, all us in this room, right? We've got to keep moving. Like I said, 90% of the body signals, which is 90% of the signals that go into the brain, so whatever 90% of 90% is, right? 81%, right? 81% of the signals that go into the hypothalamus, the center that first gets you set up for adult-onset dementia, like Alzheimer's disease, come from the sensors along the spine. Full spinal mobility is the #1 thing to ensure that you still have your mind when you're 85. So there's a reason that the little Chinese Tai Chi guy in the field in China somewhere that got up every single day for the last 75 years and did his routine to get full spinal mobility is as sharp as a tack. Did he know he was doing that? No. That was just the lifestyle he inherited from his parents. Guess what we're talking about? We're talking about what we started with, lifestyle. Right? So, I know we're not all growing up in the backwoods of China somewhere, learning, all these ways to keep our body healthy. No, we're in Canada, stressed out of our tree. That's where we are, yeah, North America, And I look at even the advent of my profession, chiropractic, it's because we don't have the right kind of lifestyle. People should not need to have to get adjusted every single week. But if I don't maintain full spinal mobility, somebody's going to go out there and they're only going to get 50 or 60% motion in their spine, and over the week it's going to degrade, and they're not going to get all the signals up to their brain. So even though they're going to a yoga class, doing their boot camp, doing their exercise, hopping on their bike, they've only got a portion of that mobility happening, so they're never getting the full realization of that. So what I do is I reset, give you 100%, so when you go out there, you actually get 100% day after day after day after day, and then we reset again, and then we reset again. So remember I said it's going to sound a little bit like a chiropractic sales pitch? Well, the reason chiropractic even exists in this country, in this culture, right? It's only been around for 120 years. Industrial Revolution, right? Like it's crazy, right? The reason that my entire profession exists is because of lifestyle. And unfortunately, truth be told, with the amount of sitting that we do, with the amount of stress that we're under, the amount of garbage in our lives, we cannot keep our spine moving the way that it ought to move without some help. It's kind of like we shouldn't need to take vitamin D3. We shouldn't have to take fish oil, right? Like you guys get this, right? I should not have to take a multivitamin every day. But if I don't, I'm going to be deficient. Why do I have to take a multivitamin every day? Anybody have any guesses on that one? Nutrient density, right? Nutrient density is brutal. I mean, you guys have all read those studies about how cabbage or lettuce from the 50s was like way more powerful than it is now. We've just farmed out all the nutrients and then we've injected it with fertilizer, right, Pat? See? Fertilizer instead of like compost. So even the good stuff isn't what we need, right? Yeah, it's good enough. So the kind of the necessary evil is the weekly adjustment, is my daily multi, is my fish oil supplement, is my vitamin D, is my tablespoon of what do I take every morning? What's that? Coconut oil. Yeah, freaks everybody out. We had some guests at our house from Ontario in the winter, and the kids were sitting in, of course, like 3-hour time zone, right? So I get up around 5 or so. First thing I do is go into the cupboard. They're all sitting at the, I'm like, oh, good to see you guys, right? Because they're like 3 hours early, right? So for them, they slept in, and they were like, we can't stay in bed any longer, okay? They were going up to Big Life for the day. So I pull out my big tub of Costco coconut oil, big scoop of like this, and the girl just goes like, what is that, right? And I basically said, well, that's because I don't want to lose my mind. But anyway, they were chiropractic kids, so they knew that we were here anyway. So, okay.
Which is the dry coconut oil as well?
No, the coconut oil is very different than the coconut. The meat of the coconut is not the same as the coconut oil. Yeah. Okay, let's keep going because everybody wants to leave. But oh yeah, this guys, this is kind of like a 1-minute video. So watch this, okay? So students, posture. Okay? So, as your posture feels, so we're talking about losing the 100% range of motion in those joints. Okay, so we're going to flip the x-ray. So these are the spinal joints. And as you lose your posture over time, or play on your phone, these joints start to degenerate. So, I know this guy kind of looks a little bit scary, but what they've done is they've taken x-rays and they've actually shown the degeneration, how that happens over time. So these are the discs. So this is where the arthritis starts. So there's no way we're going to get full range of motion out of that spine now. So it's already gone. So you think of the average senior, the amount of input that's going up into the brain, how much more they have to work to get signals up to the brain. So this is what we call phase 3, moving into phase 4, so full arthritis in the spine. And that's basically where most of our 70+ group is, that last picture in North America. So the amount of signals that they're getting to the brain from spinal mobility, zero, right? So yeah, so we need to stop that, right? We need to stop it. So then the last strategy, coming in for landing, okay, is from Matt Litterman. So socialization is huge, 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 huge. You gotta have friends. You gotta have quality friendships. And the thing that I harp on a lot of people about is you become the sum average. This is not a quote that's new to me. You become the sum average of the 5 people you hang around. So, if you value a healthy marriage, and 2 or 3 of your top friends are always saying how horrible marriage is, and that it just sucks to be married, over time, which way are you going?
Negative.
Yeah, okay. If you're trying to lose weight, you're trying to be active, and the people you hang around with indiscriminately put garbage in their body and their weight fluctuates all over, what are you going to look like after 5 years of hanging around those people? Not what you want to be, not what you want to be. If you value balancing your checkbook, but you hang around people who spend money and just every fad goes, over time, what's going to happen to you? You're going to get influenced and you're going to be purchasing things that are absolutely unnecessary. You become the sum average of the 5 people that you hang around the most. Now, I don't mean being snobbish and arrogant about this. I mean the core people that you let into your inner circle better be positive people. I got no room for negativity in my life anymore. I just have no use for it. If somebody's negative, to the curb. I got too many important things to do to be in. Now, if they come into my office and are hurting and having challenges and they're negative, I can serve them. That's different. They're not in my inner circle, right? I bring my energy and I encourage them and lift them up and try to get them as positive as possible. But University of Waterloo study about 2 months ago said basically you're wasting your breath trying to get a pessimist positive. You can look that study up. It's crazy. I put it on my Facebook page and I'm like, yeah, there it is. That's why I get so frustrated by this. Just don't let them into your inner circle, right? They're allowed to change, but don't you let them in until they change or they're taking you down. In fact, the #1 thing that I see, and Lacey can attest to this too, is spousal support or peer group support as to whether or not somebody's going to continue on with care in my office. We have an exceptional experience. Like when people come in my office, right, they're like, I've never been to a place like this before. It's crazy, you know, like you guys are so into this. Well, yeah, it is our life, right? We better be into it, right? If you're in a healthcare office and the people aren't into it, that's probably not a good place to hang out, right? So, you know, passion is really important. If you can't get passionate about health, man, oh man, that's a problem. Okay, sorry, that was definitely going sideways here. Where was I at? Oh, #1 predictor of people going sideways, right, is their peer group. They're either going to excite and ignite their friends to adopt the kind of lifestyle, 100+ living stuff that we talk about, and, you know, looking after your spine and getting your posture looked after and getting adjusted, all that kind of stuff, or they're going to get taken out. Like, it is crazy, it's crazy, but we see that slow burn happening with people. So that's why I just think it's great that we've got a full room of people here, because you know you're not alone. You're not alone in trying to figure out how to beat these diseases that everybody else says are genetic and you can't beat. Right? You're not alone. And you don't have to be a statistic. Okay? So that was being social. So my top 3 things, movement. That's actually #1 over nutrition. 2 is fats feed your brain. Brains will destroy your brain. And 3, stay social. But make sure your most influential relationships are with people that are super positive, super encouraging, that want to live a long and healthy life. Those are really, really important things. You've got to have a value set where health is a priority. You cannot afford in today's healthcare landscape to not make health your priority. You just have to. You just have to. If not, you will get what everybody else is getting, which just to me is just so unacceptable. Unacceptable. Okay. All right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to be done. If you want to find out more about us, okay? So Lighthouse chiropractic, 100+ living, all that kind of stuff. Can you flip to the next one? Okay. We have tons of ways to stay connected to us. Lacey, if you could give everybody one of those sheets. Okay. So we are going to have to do some massive editing to make this talk make sense for anyone that's watching it online. But that's the first place to stop, is our YouTube channel. We've got this all written down, so we're going to hand them out. Okay? So stop at our YouTube channel, you will get this talk and our previous ones, and hopefully if you watch some of the previous ones, it will make more sense for some of the things that I skipped over today. Right? The other thing is, we have a very, very active presence on Facebook. As much as we've just kind of started that, so it doesn't look like we've got a lot of followers and that kind of stuff, but it's growing leaps and bounds. So the other way to stay connected with us and stay connected with the stuff like the March Daily Apple and the research that I'm doing for kind of our next talk, we're moving into fitness coming up next. So just all that kind of stuff. If you like us on Facebook, then you'll get those in your feeds. I don't know how often with Facebook, it seems like it changes every week, so you may have to like it several times in order to keep getting stuff. The other thing too, if you want to be real specific with 100+ living stuff, as to know when our next talk is, what we're going to talk about, kind of some links back to the resources, because I'm going to blog my notes over the next 4 or 5 weeks. So you will actually be able to access the notes, and there'll be links and things like that for you on that, so you'll be kind of able to go to all the places and all the stuff I talked about. You'll see the research and that kind of stuff. So if you want to be on that 100+ living, that's probably the most practical connect for us, that we just need to send you an invite. So it's basically an email once a month you get. Honestly, we don't have time to get back to you. We've got too much important stuff to do. We're not sitting on our email, sending you 18 emails a day. You get one email a month, hopefully, and maybe it'll be once every 6 weeks. But it'll give you the post on, hey, what's going on, where we're going to be, what we're talking about. Hey, check this link out, check this out, our radio's up, that kind of stuff. All right? Glad you guys came. Everybody go.